Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jeb with Tapped Out Cycles, and today we're going to be installing a fuel sending unit for a Harley Sportster XL model. This sending unit is going to go internal to the tank, and it's going to show a display. Okay, so now we've unpackaged everything and we've gone through the inventory list to make sure all of the parts are here. We have the pigtail, we have the fuel sending unit, we have a new gasket. Make sure that you replace that, it's pretty important. We have screw and washer to mount the fuel sending unit. We have a heat shrink butt connector. So this is actually going to crimp on to the end of this wire and then to this one here. Then you can use a lighter, a little bit of heat, or a heat gun, and that will seal the end, so it'll shrink it up. Pretty cool little things. A few zip ties and a pigtail. That's about it. But go through your inventory list, make sure you're good to go. So this is 2017 model. We're going to go ahead and get started. We need to pull the fuel tank. We need to remove the seat, remove the side cover, pull the fuel pump out, and then of course, drain all the gas. We'll show you how to do all that. So, flat blade screwdriver to loosen that, and then it will spin out by hand. Seat's going to slide back, and then it's going to go forward, and then come back again. And the reason that you have to go forward on it is this is a little counterintuitive. It locks opposite of what you would think. So also have a locking tab in here, and that goes underneath the fuel tank and then on this mount point. All right, after we remove the seat, we need to remove the side cover. The way to get this side cover off is you have these two black clips here. And you're going to kind of pry that up with your thumb or use a small screwdriver, but you run the risk of nicking the paint if you use a screwdriver. But just pry that up, get one side out, pry the other side up, get that side out. You can either let this hang down. In this case, I'm just going to move it out of the way to keep from damaging it at all. It is clipped on the bottom here, so once it's down this low, you can kind of pick it up and slide it off. You can kind of see where that's clipped on or hooked on. And then we'll just place this out of the way where it doesn't get damaged. All right, now that we have the cover out of the way, we're going after two things. One, we're going to go after the fuel sending unit resistor plug. Additionally, we're going to go for the pigtail, which also it actually plugs into the access port for diagnostics or accessories or anything like that. Here's the accessory plug that we're going to go after. It's a gray plug with a rubber cap. So that sits up underneath this cover. Sometimes it may be tucked down below here. And then the fuel sending unit resistor is going to be beneath this cover. You'll need a T27 Torx bit to remove this cover. It's just one screw. Once you remove that, the cover slides towards you to unlatch, and then just finesse it out. Once you have it finessed out of the way, and here's the cover. Once you have that cover finessed out of the way, you can see the different plugs. And this is the plug we're going after. So this is the fuel sending unit resistor. It looks like it just has a cap on the end. And we'll eventually get to this portion and we'll unplug that, but we'll do that here in a few minutes. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and grab a 1/2-inch open end wrench and a hex bit 1/4 inch to remove the fuel tank. I'm going to remove these rubber caps, both the front and rear bolts. And Harley really like their Loctite here because they vibrate so badly. I think they were worried the fuel tank would fall off. I'd kind of be worried too. Okay, now that we have the tank bolts loose, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the overflow line as well as the fuel line itself. The fuel line itself, it's pretty easy if you know what you're doing. It has a coupler This silver portion is a coupler. It's spring loaded, and you're gonna kind of pinch it with your 2 fingers, pull it up as you're pulling the line down. Just like that. So what I did is I just pinched the side. This slides up and down, and then you can pull the line off. And then this is just gonna kind of come off to the back. So now that we have the line disconnected and the fuel line disconnected, we also need to remove the plug and the wiring harness that are connecting the fuel pump, and that runs up underneath this cover. So it runs from the fuel pump and it kind of routes along here, which this is the line. It drops behind this cover and goes here. There's a zip tie that we've cut. We can go ahead and remove that zip tie and then pull this out of the way. Here's the plug right here. It's a little difficult. I'll show you once we get it apart how it connects. So it's actually slid onto, after it connects, you slide it onto a little clip here. So first you have to slide it off that clip and then take this push tab and push down. It takes quite a bit of force. I had to move to the other side to get it undone, but just push that down and then pull it apart and you're good to go. So now that you have the tank flipped up on its side, make sure the fuel level is definitely below whatever you're removing, otherwise you're going to make a mess. But yeah, once it's to that point, I kind of protected the tank by putting a pad below and on the other side. Flip it up and you can go ahead and remove these 5 bolts. They're Torx T25. They shouldn't be too terribly tight, so I think just a regular screwdriver style will work. Sometimes these are a little bit tricky to get out of the way. The zip ties kind of get hung up, but just kind of massage it out. Take your time because sometimes it can be a little frustrating. And there's the fuel pump assembly. So we're going to be removing the low fuel sending sensor. It's only low fuel, so it's like when you're out of gas. And we're going to be installing an actual display. It's held on with a one-way washer. It has, I'll show you when I take it off, but it's slit, and so it slides onto the plastic piece, but you can't pull it back off. They're a pain in the butt to get off. On this one, you have a little bit of area off to the back side of this metal bracket that exposes the washer, and so it makes it a little easier to get up underneath there. Once you get it up underneath, you can kind of start prying it off. You're not going to be reusing it, so don't worry about damaging it. There's no way to reuse these things in the first place. So you just kind of work it off and destroy it in the process. So this is the washer that's kind of a pain to get off. It's kind of domed in shape, and then it has these metal teeth where they slit the washer, so it goes on one way, but it can't retract, it can't come back off, and so the only way to get them is just destroy them. So once we have it this far, we can kind of slide a pick up underneath, lift this white piece of plastic up and rotate the pick, and it will pull the... So we've gone ahead and got this sending unit in position. We did have to rotate this portion out of the way so that it would clear, because we didn't have any clearance. The hose was routed in line with the sending unit, and so we had to just take this and rotate it to allow for clearance. So now that we have it in there and its position, make sure that it's not touching any of the wiring anywhere around. We'll go ahead and take the washer and the screw and go ahead and screw this in to secure it. It's plastic, so don't over torque it. It's not going to come out because it kind of threaded as it went in. It also came with a pigtail for some models. In this case, we do not need the pigtail. We'll just make sure that this is routed out of the way, and we'll plug it into the existing harness. All right, and that's that. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and remove the fuel pump gasket. Pick that out of the way. Slide that off. Go ahead and place the new one on. It is directional, so this is double lipped on the bottom and single lip on the top. And push it in all the way around. Make sure it's secure, seated all the way down, and we're good to go. We're ready to install this back into the fuel tank. And before this is mounted into the tank, just make sure that all the wires clear the sending unit, because it will disrupt the signal. So make sure that you have them away from the sending unit, nothing touching it, and then kind of zip tie everything out of the way up top or wherever you feel. So you can see I have clearance on this side from the hose, and there's clearance all the way down. Again, going back in, the same thing as coming out. You have to be really careful and massage it in. It's a little tricky, so just take your time and work it in. I'm gonna go ahead and use a little bit of Loctite on the fuel pump screws, just a little blue. You don't have to do this, but it's not a bad precautionary measure. Kind of loosely seat all of them in before you tighten any of them. And then we'll tighten these in a cross pattern and bottom them all out. And we are good to go. We are ready to install that tank back on the bike. Next, we're going to remove the front brake master cylinder cap. 2 screws holding that. And we're going to install the new cap that they provided to route the wiring up underneath the backbone of the bike, underneath the tank, before we put the tank on. We're going to reuse the diaphragm. That's the OEM diaphragm. We're going to reuse the piece that captures the diaphragm and reinstall those 2 pieces. There we go. They make a chrome version and a black version. If you purchase the chrome version, it will come with chrome screws. This one will just reuse the screws that were OEM. And we'll go ahead and snug this back up, and then take a little brake cleaner and wipe it up, any excess that may have squeezed out. I've actually already pulled the clips that capture the turn signal wires. We're going to route the fuel gauge wiring through the same clips. These are again just a pain to work with. The handlebars are drilled with a hole, and these kind of push in and then they flare out. So these pieces flare out. You can try to just pull straight out with them, but a lot of times they'll end up breaking because these will snag on the hole as they're supposed to. So the proper way to do it is kind of reach up there with a little pick and collapse them while you pull them out. They're a little bit of a tricky thing to do, but take your time and you'll get them. And we can route this through the backside. I removed the cover. It's a T25 again. And we'll fish this down through next. Gonna follow along with like the same harness, the main harness where all the other wiring is going, so make it look clean. I'm gonna cut the zip tie that's holding all the wiring together, and then route it down through here behind the coil bracket, and then wrap another zip tie on this harness that we removed, and then tighten it up, not too tight. And then when you cut these, man, I'm real particular about this stuff. Like, I hate getting bit by zip ties, so make sure you have a good, nice pair of dikes and like go all the way flush. Cut these things flush where you can rub your finger. Nobody wants to be cut on an angle where you have a big angle and it's like a knife and then you end up bleeding. Nobody likes that. It puts you in a bad mood. Just take the time to do it right. Me. So now that we have everything routed from the top side, from the display, we routed it along the spine of the bike, along this harness. On the back side, we're going to actually tuck it behind the ECM. We're going to tuck it right in front of the ECM and behind the back of the plastic piece so that the cover can go back on. You can't route it on this side because this cover, you're going to remove the cap and plug it in. So we're good to go there. Go ahead and put it, you have to slip it back on its little, it has a piece molded on the case and a cutaway on the back of the clip. You have to kind of put it up against and slide it back so that it fits on there properly. We still need to access the back portion to route everything correctly, but that will hold the tank secure. So while we're routing all of this and doing the wiring, tank's not going to fall, but make sure that you put a bolt in there. So we've gone ahead and plugged in the fuel pump back into its slot, into its clip, and we've gone ahead and routed previously the display wiring in front of the ECM and behind the cover and plug that in. We've wrapped that with a zip tie. So at this point we're ready to go ahead and tie this up out of the way, and we can go ahead and put the cover back on. So now that that cover is secure, we can go ahead and take the provided pigtail that goes into the diagnostic port and remove that rubber cap. Place that on the side. Actually, we can go ahead and place it in here. This one was already broken. You can either leave it attached to that side or it doesn't really matter, but go ahead and plug that up, and then we can plug it in here. This orange wire, which is the remainder or the remaining of the wiring that needs to be done, is going to get connected to the orange or the red and orange wiring here. So we'll go ahead and I think I'm going to take a little material off about right here, just so I don't have quite so much to work with, a few inches, and then we'll strip that back. We'll crimp it in and then we'll heat shrink it. Have these handy little strippers. Awesome. Amazon special. They grab a hold and strip at the same time. Makes life so easy. I'll put a link in the description. They're like 12 bucks or something. It brings value to your life, though. A lot more than $12. Go ahead and crimp it, nice and tight. And then these are already ready to heat shrink, so oh, look at that. That's sexy stuff. Don't melt it. Get hot. I think before we finish it up, we're going to go ahead and turn the key on here in a second. We'll hook the fuel line up and make sure that everything's functioning the way that it should function. The 07 models only, and it says in the instructions on this thing, the 07 only, it requires you to adjust the parameters using software for the ECU, otherwise it won't register correctly. Everything else is fine. So 08 on through current is fine. So before we button this thing up the rest of the way, I want to make sure that it functions the way that it should. So we'll just go ahead and turn the key on, read the display, make sure everything's good to go. Then we'll clean up our wiring and put it the rest of the way together. So we're reading 2 bars right now. So that's about what we had, was a half tank, a little less, and we're good to go. So we'll turn the key back off and button this thing the rest of the way up, clean up the wiring, and then I think we have an exhaust system on this one, but we're not shooting video on that, so yeah, we'll be good. So we have everything, all the wiring tidied up now, and we had to be a little bit creative. This is just a tight fit up underneath the cover, so be creative, route where you need to, where nothing's interfering with the cover and no wires are going to get chafed on the long term or pinched on the long term. Once you've test fit a few times, which we have, and we've zip tied everything up out of the way, you can go ahead and slide this cover up. Lock it on and you're good to go. We have a few other things that we're going to have to do with this, as far as put the tank bolts back in, secure those, and put the vent line on, have somebody double check your work, and put it back together, put the seat on, and we'll be good. All right, so it wraps it up for the sporty fuel gauge installation. I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you go out and hit that subscribe button. That helps us out. And if you have a video that you want to see shot, or you have something you're having a hard time with, drop us a line on an inbox. Thanks a lot.